Hi folks. Have a couple of inverters. This particular one here is a 3000 watt. It's an Eliminator Motor Master. It's an older type. Actually, I think when I got it, it was a remanufactured one, but never knew that until I actually started taking it apart to find out what the problem was after lightning struck, and it just no longer worked. And I have another one that just quit recently, and it is a 1750 watt, same name, Motor Master Eliminator. So I wanted to talk to you about 75% of the problem when these quit working is all these switches on the side you see. There's names for them, but I'm not even going to get technical, because it's all you have to do is bend it over and read it and do some research and buy yourself some new ones. That's all you got to do. So what they're called is, it really doesn't matter. And then on the other side here, there's a whole bunch more, little bigger ones. What they do basically is just switch. Just like almost like switches, realistically. And there's a whole bunch of them. Now they're not very expensive at all. These you can pick up 10 of them for about $3, $4. You know, in some cases you're going to pay $10, but they're not very expensive at all. And this is half of the 3000 watts. So this one here pushes out 1000 watts, the half side, and the other half side is the 2000 watt side. And this one here has a whole bunch there too, you can see. So I brought it into a fella that knows quite a bit about electronics, and I asked him on the phone if he could test them, all these switches, while it was in the board, electronic board. And he told me he could, so I said, well, that's great. And I brought it to him, and little to find out, once I brought it to him, he told me, he says, no, they pretty much need to be out of the board to test them properly, to know for sure. So I was like, well, that doesn't make much sense. I mean, if they have to come out of the board to test them, I mean, I might as well just replace them all. Plain and simple. Just replace them all to begin with. Don't even worry about which ones are good and which ones are bad, because 75% of the time, that's exactly what goes, are these little switches on the sides. And they're heat synced usually to the body. In some cases they'll have their own heat sink to them, but in this case here, they're actually heat synced to the body itself of the inverter. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to flip them down, get the information on the side of it, do some research, find out where to get them. They all have numbers, and if anybody is can solder, and if anybody has a little bit of time on their hands, or wants to make some time on their hands and attempt a fix of their inverter when it quit, you might be surprised how easy it is and how cheap it'll end up being. To replace this inverter is going to cost me about $400 plus your taxes, or close to $500. Now to buy all these pieces I'm going to need for both of them is about $125. So that's not a bad deal. And I'm assuming it might take me 6-7 hours to do all this properly. Pull them all, desolder them all, and then resolder the new ones in. And I'm going to do it in stages. It's going to be my first attempt on something like this. I've done lots of soldering before on electronic boards and whatnot, but on this exact type thing, it'll be my first attempt. But I have no worries. I'm going to take my time, be slow at it, and I'm going to do one at a time. Then after I'm done, I'm going to take my tester and test everything out, make sure it has continuity, meaning make sure it's grabbing a hold of what it needs to be grabbing a hold of. The connection is made. And after that, I can just about guarantee myself that it's going to work again. Now, I'm not 100% certain, but when everything else looks okay on your circuit board, nothing else is showing any kind of signs that's bad, the chances are really, really good that that's exactly what the problem is. It could be all of these, or a few of these, or whatever. So in my case, I'm not going to worry about a couple of them, or a few of them. I'm going to change every single one of them. They're cheap enough to do, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. to replace both of these inverters, I'd be talking about $800. So for $125 for the replacement parts and some time spent, that's a pretty good day. That's a pretty good day's earnings. And I have an inverter back. So folks, if you have any kind of handiness to you, you might want to try the same attempt. Save your inverter instead of throwing it away. It just makes sense. You might suffer a little bit of loss. Now if I was to do just the one inverter, the cost would be very, very little. This particular inverter, maybe $15, $20. Well, this inverter itself is over $200. I believe it's $260. You know, plus your taxes, you're looking at over $300. And this particular one here doesn't have a whole lot of them little switches on it, but it has enough. You can see them on the sides there. And some on the other side. Not very many. Now when you do take it apart, you want to make sure you take it apart so you kind of know how everything goes back together. And in my case, on this one here, this is the half for this half, and I put a little piece of red tape. Just indicates which way it goes in, and it slides in. You line it up with the holes that are along the side, and then in my case, these little brackets here go inside, and screws pull it tight, and that's what goes up against these little switches here, like so. And it's really that simple. So I'm going to make this attempt, and I don't have the parts obviously, so I'm not going to make a video of doing it, or desoldering them, or resoldering them. But everybody gets the idea of what's involved. Trial and error it yourself. See how it goes. I might make another video once I get them all back together. This is just a little video showing everybody that the possibilities that someone could possibly do themselves and save themselves some money if their inverter goes bad. Or now I'm talking about inverters, folks. I'm not talking about all of your electronic appliances or electronic devices. I'm not talking about all of them. I'm talking about your inverters, DC to AC inverters. The most common problem. It's the most common. There's no saying that it won't be anything else. It could be a little capacitor, but usually something will indicate something. It'll burn marks or a little mini explosion inside the circuit board. So if you don't see any kind of indication of anything and everything looks perfectly normal, then the chances are really, really good that one of these switches are bad on the outside. And in some cases, these little switches will even explode. It all depends on the reason why it went bad. In my case, it was basically just a surge apparently that went through it from lightning, and one of the switches or several of the switches just let go, and then the whole unit was unable to work. And in this particular unit, well, it just stopped working. Plain and simple. Now another real good thing to check first before you start monkeying around with too much is the switches. The switches go bad. Dust and debris and whatnot can get inside that switch and make it lose its contact. So that's a really good thing to check first. And there is fuses in here. Obviously you check the fuses, make sure they didn't blow. But I've actually never ran into a fuse yet that's blue. All of these fuses are perfectly okay. Both boards have them on a 3000 watt inverter. There's some down in there, and there's some down in there. There's more double ones here, double ones there, and they're perfectly okay, them ones. And on this board here, you have some fuses, they're down in here, and they're perfectly okay. So the good thing first to check is the switch. Do the obvious first, because a lot of times these switches go bad. I've talked to a lot of folks, and that's exactly what the problem was this switch. And I think due to just dust and debris getting inside the switch and kind of canceling out any kind of connection, So sometimes perhaps you could take the switch apart and clean it, clean the contacts, and it might be okay, or just replace the switch. Okay folks, well thank you for watching, and if you subscribed, thank you, and if you have not, please do so.